So the astrology of the week of 11 April 2022 through 17 April 2022, it brings in a way, a cooling off with Mars entering Pisces to cool down significantly. So we get this cooling off with Mars this week, but at the same time, it's this last expansive phase with the final waxing moon cycle before eclipse season arrives. And I think we'll have some completions here, some culminations this week with a lot of our story as we then settle into the vortex that is eclipse season that will kind of suck us into it. So I think this is a nice week. Let's get into the charts. Let's get into the astrology this week. My name is S.J. Anderson. Welcome here to my channel. Thanks for being here. Every Sunday I record a video and I release it. And I talk about the astrology of the week ahead. I call it weekly astrology. We dive into the astrology. And it's become a very nice touchstone for me to just do this every week and then give it out and share it. And hopefully you're connecting with it and we're able to navigate these waters, these waves of reality that are happening independent of the astrological symbolism, but that when we overlay this symbolic map that is the astrological set of techniques, that symbolic map can inform these waves of reality and give us a deeper insight into what's happening in a way that's beneficial, fruitful, and that can kind of satisfy our soul in some sense. So that's the goal and the purpose of why I do this. I want to just dive right in here to the charts and let's look at what's happening this week. The major stories are going to be threefold as what I've been doing, these three major stories. The first one will be the particularized Virgo Moon, which is going to arrive this week. The moon enters Virgo on Tuesday at 4 in the afternoon in Central Europe. This Virgo moon is special because again, it's this last waxing phase before eclipse season. But this Virgo moon has a lot of things to love about it with respect to the configurations. We'll dive into all of that. I have here opportunities for action related to Mercury, business, expansion of all kinds. The second big story, Mars enters Pisces. This happens on Friday at 5 a.m. in Central Europe. This is going to cool off Mars. This is going to be Mars out of Aquarius, out of the Saturn-ruled sign of Aquarius, the day sign, where Mars can sometimes struggle because it's just too much energy. You know, you think about warriors, sometimes you battle at night. Under the cover of night, you can have more effective war strategies. But Mars was with Saturn in Aquarius, now Mars leaves. So this is going to settle us up in with this whole eclipse season with Mars and Pisces. So it's an energy we must get familiar with. We'll talk about that in this video. And then the third story, the third major story is the Libra full moon. This is that final syzygy before eclipse season, 2 eclipses. First a solar eclipse in Taurus, then a lunar eclipse in Scorpio. And so this is the final non-eclipse syzygy. After this, we then begin moving into the eclipse vortex, you might say. Vortex, portal, all of these words that people kind of, maybe they bristle at a little bit. But I do think the eclipse seasons can be quite, you know, I was gonna say challenging, but just quite dynamic, challenging. I need some new words here, but just, they can take, time can lose its sense. We sort of get gripped with circumstances that maybe have been waiting for us, and we're called into this very kind of strange, active period that often eclipse season can be. So this is a full moon, right? A culmination of a full moon, but then we kind of wane into this vortex after this moment, and we begin that waning cycle this week after the Libra full moon. That is going to arrive on Saturday at 9 in Central Europe. So that Saturday night or Friday night even might be, if you're out partying or out in bars or dance halls or whatever you like to do, you might be feeling an intensity with this full moon on Friday. I may try to get out a little bit and just feel. I love full moons. I love going to feel the energy. I've talked about that here before, but I love when you feel just people. Most of them don't know what's happening and they're excited and you can feel life teeming through people and bodies as they're interacting. It's warmer now, and so I like the summer full moons. Sometimes can be the best, or these spring full moons where people are out and mixing, you know, in the northern hemisphere. Down under, maybe you get some of that with the fall full moon. I know it's still probably pretty warm there in some places in Australia. So All right, so those are the three main stories. Quickly, what else is happening that I'm not going to talk about again? Mercury enters Taurus. That will become a major player this week, Mercury in Taurus. But know that Mercury now is coming out of its period under the sun's beams and mixing with the sun. That's nice to have this week. Mercury will enter its Egyptian terms this week in Taurus, and it does emerge out from the sun's beams this week. So there's kind of a Mercury story that's a big part of the week for sure. Like I said, we'll get into it. Saturn will be with the South Bending, conjoin the South Bending, also known as squaring the lunar nodes, Rahu and Ketu, North Node, South Node. That happens also on Monday, later in the day, 4:30. And this, I think, is a quite important transit, actually. I would like to talk about it in more in depth, but but I'm not. Just to keep, it's nice to have a redact and have a direct conveyance that isn't unwieldy. But just to say a couple of thoughts here on it, these are long-term planetary points. I mean, Saturn moves every 30 years, the nodes are every 18 years. So to have Saturn meeting the South Bending is a big deal. Saturn met the South Node, I believe, in 2019. And so that was the last time you had that Saturn and hard aspect with the nodes. And now here we are in 2022, so 3 years later. And, I think we can consider just the fated nature of it. So like eclipses bring these kind of energies, things that were set up that were meant to experience or engage in. Similarly with Saturn and Aquarius and the whole story of Saturn and Aquarius, what is it here for? Why did Saturn come into Aquarius? Well, we know because it's astronomy, but what is the circumstantial reason, we might say, the unfoldment, the collective and interpersonal unfoldment of Saturn's time in Aquarius? What was the kind of true purpose of it? And you might be thinking about that a little bit here on Monday. And it was even last week, and now into this week, it'll be very closely conjoin the South Bending. But I'll say, I just tweeted out something on Twitter. This story in China, lockdowns have been a huge part of Saturn and Aquarius. We know that's been part of the global theme of the technological feature of how people can, be restricted, Saturn is restriction, in their homes, but then using technology to kind of flourish in spite of maybe physical restriction. Major theme of Saturn and Aquarius. I've seen stories out of Shanghai right now. There is maybe the worst lockdowns they've had this whole period are happening right now in Shanghai, and some of the videos are pretty shocking. So you can see me on Twitter. I've tweeted out this confirmed video of people, they're crying out of their windows in their apartments. I've lived in these Chinese apartments. They're actually pretty cool. You have these huge complexes of like 16-story buildings, and you'll have like 20 of them. And it's a really nice way to, I think, organize high density population, because then you have these big gardens, and it's a very nice efficient way to maybe live. So, but you can hear them in these courtyards kind of crying out of their windows, and it's a really tough time right now there in Shanghai. You may want to send some good energy there, but I think it's part of the nodal energetic telling us that Saturn and Aquarius is what it's been about. And it's been about the ability for someone to film a video, and then I'm sitting here where I am in the Western Balkans, I can watch it instantly. I'm talking about it now, this will go out to the whole world. This kind of reverberation feature of the technological age and how that interacts with the restrictive component of even the structures of society. Restrict, but then you use technology to expand. This whole dance, and it's a complex theme, that's what I'm saying. It's a whole video. I mean, this is a whole lecture series, actually. The nodes in Saturn, you could do a deep lecture series on it, quite interesting lecture series, I think. I'm just treating it as like a throwaway in this video, but just know that happens Monday. So you might want to feel into your own Saturn and Aquarius story and what maybe is the deeper meaning of it. Think about that for your own life. Okay, let's go here. The Sun will sextile Saturn. That can be a sweet Aries Aquarius exchange with the exaltation ruler of Aries sextiling the domicile ruler of Aquarius. Won't say too much about that. I think that this sextile is baked into some of the charts that I want to talk about. The Aries Aquarius sextile, and we've had that in these succeeding weeks. But I will say again, more shining light on Saturn and Aquarius. And this is one of the major themes I actually want to bring about right now. well, I'm gonna wait. We'll get into it, okay? So then the last two stories there I've already talked about in the introduction. Mars into Pisces, the full moon in Libra. The lunar cycle, the lunation cycle, we start out with the Leo moon squaring Saturn and Mars and the nodes, and then we finish with the Scorpio moon with the south node squaring Saturn. So I think that those are some of the, again, the more dynamic or rougher aspects. It's this midweek pocket of the lunation cycle, this growth, this waxing moon into the full moon that I think is some of the best astrology. We get it again. We had the Cancer moon last week. So many people, as particularly astrologers, launching their projects during that lovely, lovely Cancer moon. This week's iteration of the same waxing cycle, I think, offers some more opportunities with Virgo and Mercury. And so the elections around mercurial things, I think, are better this week. I'm curious to see who's going to be launching under this Virgo moon or maybe even this Libra moon. So, okay, I am gonna shift now. Let's just shift, okay? Let's get into the first chart. First chart is the Virgo moon, the transit of the week. This, the thing I love about it, and this is why I actually even liked this moon better than the Cancer moon in some ways, because during the Cancer moon, you had Mercury quite harmed. I mean, it was under the beams of the sun. Now with the sun, the exalted sun, that's a great mitigation. But now there's issues with this Virgo moon too. In no part of the Virgo moon is Mercury fully out from under the sun's beams, depending on what definition you use, but it's pretty darn close here. But what I like about it is that the moon, again, makes aspects to the benefic planets. So it will oppose Venus and oppose Jupiter. And so it's getting the touch points. We see in the ancient text repeatedly, let the benefics see a planetary point. They use the analogy of the planets making visual identification from one planet to the next in terms of how a benefic planet, in this case Venus and Jupiter both, can give good energy to other planetary points. And so you get that with the moon. It is seen by both Venus and Jupiter in this chart from Pisces. And then look at the ruler. So this is the other thing I've been focused on, is you've got Mercury now in Taurus, and there is a mutual reception. The exaltation ruler of Taurus being the moon, and the domicile ruler and exaltation ruler of Virgo being Mercury. And so there's this great trine between the moon and Mercury. In any election, you want the ruler of the moon strong. And I think in this case, there's a strength here between Mercury and the moon, and then Mercury also receiving these sextiles from both Venus and Jupiter, these overcoming sextiles. And so this chart has a lovely dance between the benefic planets, the moon and the ruler of the moon. Those are configured here in these very auspicious ways. And so I think this is a lovely chart, one you can use. Let me see what I have here. Moon, mutually received. So I just said that. So there we go. Sextile ruler, cool. So yeah, the domicile ruler of Mercury is Venus, and it makes the sextile. So Mercury is received by both its exaltation and domicile ruler, is another way to say that, as is the moon, and which is that Mercury. And so this is a lovely chart. Let me go to my next slide. How might I use this? I say this is a Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Moon party, which might come as a needed break from all of the Mars, Saturn energy and that nodal energy. The fixed sign hard aspect, the T-square between the nodes and Mars and Saturn conjoining, that I've been calling it max pain, I think, where particularly for those fixed placements, it was a really challenging moment of sort of maximum intensity. But that's now dissipating this week. And I think this party here with the two benefics, Mercury and the moon, might come as a much needed break from some of the intensity of those Mars and Saturn, coldness, breakage, force and restriction, all of the more difficult things in our astrological system. We need parties like this. We need to settle into jubilees at times. We need to appreciate the beauty of a moment, even in, you see these videos out of Kyiv, where you have people getting married or people dancing still and singing in the streets, even in the midst of the chaos that is there in Kyiv. So, Beauty is ever present. Astrology affords us moments where we can alternate between these moments of great intensity and difficult intensity with these kind of beautiful moments. And I hope, maybe I'll say this here, this Cancer Moon, I hope you got some nice, things from that and enjoyed that. I know for me, yeah, it was cool. I was like having lunch with some cool people, and I was like just kind of resting and relaxing. I mean, it was a very, I think I captured some of that upside quite well. It's been a challenge, I think, too, when you have a lot of water and these powerful water planets. Sometimes there's an emotional component, or there's kind of getting lost in the sea of feeling that can also emerge. And that Cancer Moon, remember, happened with Mars and Saturn very close still and squaring those nodes. And that is a big part of the overlay in astrology. Nothing ever happens in isolation. And so while we had the lovely Cancer Moon, we had some real challenging T-squares, like I was mentioning. And then this is also what I'm going to say here. I didn't mention that in the video. A big story this week. Most other astrologers, this is going to be the lead story in their video. Jupiter and Neptune perfect a conjunction this week. Okay, I'm not going to talk about it. It's not with the domain of topics that I like to address in this video. The conjunctions with Neptune, Uranus, or dwarf planets is just outside of my purview in terms of what I've been doing here. But it's worth saying. I mean, you can see it in the chart here. Look at this. They're both in the 24th degree now by the time you get to this Virgo moon. But think about, this is just an aside, what would Jupiter and Neptune be? There's it's a big topic as well, but the last time they conjoined, I think, I don't have the exact date memorized, I should. It was in the late aughts or early teens. I think it's a once in every 11, 12, 13 year cycle, maybe 13-year cycle. And that was probably then 2009, I believe is when it was. Right after that financial crash, you had the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn. In Aquarius, pardon me, in Aquarius. I should know this. You can tell I'm not, I love Neptune, I love Uranus. I use them for things, definitely. More for kind of mundane cycle work that I research for my own sort of private, interpersonal, astrological obsessions. But it's not something that day in and day out I think about, because these planets they're not assigned rulers. And so much of what I love about astrology is the interrelationship between planets vis-a-vis rulership. You don't have that with Neptune. It's very hard to kind of put them into the rulership system, just kind of excise out the way that the system was developed, and then just kind of insert things. There's intellectual and sort of logical breakdowns with attempts to do that, in my view. Anyhow, let me come back. Know that you may feel, if you feel lost, if you feel confused, if you feel unsettled, you have a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction overseeing everything. Not only the Cancer Moon last week, but also all of this cycle, this waxing moon cycle this week. That's the backdrop energy of this moment. And the upside to it may be feeling lost, confused, untethered. That can be good, right? We sometimes want to release and separate out into some divine reality, and maybe less tangible ways of being, but it can also be destabilizing and uncomfortable. So that's my Jupiter conjoined Neptune interlude. Happens this week. It happens on Tuesday, the same day that the inflation numbers get released in the US. I think we're going to see record inflation headlines on Tuesday. It'll be a part of just the story here. So, okay, let me tone back down now and come back now to the Virgo moon transit of the week, what I've been talking about. The opportunity here, I think, is that this idea that we live in a material world. And you see that you have the moon and Mercury both in these earth signs, and it's Mercury's earth domicile. The physical, tangible materiality of our reality can be what's in focus with earth sign activation. And we live in physical bodies, right? The moon is the physical body. The moon is the triplicity ruler of earth signs at nighttime. Mercury is something, mercurial detail orientation is something we can bring to the physical form and the material form, right? We have to manage and maintain the physical. We have to cut the nails. I need to cut mine. We have to trim the hair and the beard or whatever, get our facial work, and our hair trimmed. And maintaining the physical body is a mercurial feature. But there's a beautiful kind of honoring of the spirit that comes with that. And every spiritual tradition, most have this notion that the body is divine as well. It's not something to be loathed, right? It is. Now some have this, but you know, you have like in Mahayana Buddhism, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. That you have in other like Gnostic traditions that the body is to be celebrated and fully enjoyed because it's a divine, you know, because of its divine capacity. The body is a temple, I think, and that's a Bible verse, you know. But many traditions have this kind of respect for the physical as a celebration of the divine, and that's where I want to feel into this moment. And what kind of elections can you do here to honor your physicality? And even if you have like a business or financial activity or anything like that, you can think about that as just our role. Your role here in this realm is to do that and do it well, as sort of a service of celebrating the spirit and the divine spirit. I don't think we have to kind of lower things like money or business or any of the material things that we enjoy as a kind of lower realm. They can be used in service of the Most High, let's say. So that's kind of what I would go through when I'm going through here, the sacredness of the physicality and the body and its form. You know, you may want to use this for all kinds of things. There's people talking about haircut elections. I saw that a lot of astrologers got their haircut during that Cancer moon. This, I think, would be a fine moon to get your haircut as well if you missed out on those haircut elections. If you're electing for your hair cut. So anyhow, this is my transit of the week, the Virgoan, the physical, the tangible celebration of that in this kind of Venus-Jupiter moon party with these kind of beautiful configurations. All right, let me move to the next chart. This next chart is the 15th of April, 5 in the morning here on Friday. Mars enters Pisces. And this is so cool. During this Libra moon at night, you're going to have, and during the moon's first 10 degrees of Libra, if we add decanic or decan or face dignity, which it's, you know, in the traditional astrological schools, particularly like Renaissance astrology, you know, they have these charts. That's where the charts from my software that you see here come from, more of the Renaissance tradition, where they made tables and assigned numbers to dignity. I'm talking like, you know, 17th, 16th, 17th century, 18th century astrologers. They would put decan dignity, they include that. The ancient astrologers, the Hellenistic, not as much. They're more interested in term dignity, triplicity dignity, exaltation, and domicile as the major forms of dignity. But let's, for the purposes of this point, add decan dignity. The first 10 degrees of this Libra moon at night, you have every planet with dignity. Every planet will be dignified. And that's kind of rare. And I think it speaks to the symbolic importance of this week and this final waxing moon cycle before eclipse season, and this final waxing moon cycle with Jupiter in Pisces and Venus there in Pisces, the epic Piscean moment that we're in of this double malefic energy. We have now a little pocket, these early degree Libra moon, where all planets have some strength. And I love when you see this, because it means that anything we want, a lot of what we may want to do will have a little bit more support or have some support. And every natal chart, there's 7 planets that rule the houses in your chart. They all in the transiting sky have a little bit of power now. So maybe all areas of the life can be supported a little bit. Now it can be much more complicated, because there's a whole different story here in terms of what's the strongest planet, where is it in your natal chart. That's a whole different analysis. But just to say, as a backdrop energy of this moment, everything's got dignity here. Thursday night, Friday morning, after the moon enters Libra. The exact time of the moon's entry into Libra, let's just get that up so we know that. 14 April, that's Thursday at 22:45 in Central Europe. So 10:45 in Central Europe PM on Thursday. So you'll start from that moment on and then into the morning until sunrise on Friday of this moment with all of these planets dignified. I like it to just know that, use that, feel into that. Now let's go break down the chart. So Mars is entering Pisces, and you've got here, warms the water of truth seeking and beauty. This is the phrase I'm going to use. I was on a podcast with Kira from the Astrology show and the 11th house astrology community. I was on her show this week with some other astrologers. Really fun time, had a blast with them. We were talking about the astrology in the next 2 weeks, but Kira offered this analogy of a hot tub. that Mars comes into Pisces and it's like a hot tub. I love that analogy. I just love it. I say warms the water of truth here, truth seeking and beauty. You know, heat is what's needed to get comfortable sometimes. So that to the extent that Venus and Jupiter in Pisces have been chaotic, maybe Mars comes in to give direction. You know, heat and direction sometimes can be just what we need. I talked just moments ago about the Jupiter Pisces untethering. Mars can tether, Mars can ground, because it's all about what we're going to do and what we're moving to and towards. And I think this can give some grounding to the Piscean moment that we're in. So enjoy that. And also from the ancient system, Mars is better in Pisces because it's cool. The heat of Aquarius, you know, it's like Mars in Aquarius is like Saturn sending Mars out to, like, you know, rein people in or to use Mars for energies of restriction. Now we get Jupiter and Venus using Mars in this case to maybe direct our truth seeking and direct this release of wisdom and beauty that's a huge part of the rest of this month, actually. This now has, with Mars' entry into Pisces, we now have the major players and pieces in place of this, this epic April. This April of Pisces, you might call it. And so the next slide here, I want to point out the second point. 4 major rulers of Pisces now convene, a la a family meeting. With triplicity rulers, there is a third supporting ruler, but it doesn't get to lead, whether in the day or the night. But there are 2 major triplicity rulers. Each one is assigned a major rulership over the night or day. And for Pisces, it's Mars and Venus. So both of the major triplicity rulers are here. The exaltation ruler is here, and then the domicile ruler is here. They're all here. We could break down terms, rulers, and face rulers. The thing about those forms of dignity is they only are restricted to certain degrees, whereas triplicity, rulership, domicile, and exaltation rulership are over the full set of 30 degrees of a sign. And so I think there's something here with just these rulers, triplicity, exaltation, and domicile joining, where we can really say it's the family meeting. And the analogy I was thinking about on Kira's show and even before that is like these crime shows. I think I've probably talked about it here. I've been watching Peaky Blinders, but The Godfather is back in the media now. And there's always scenes in these crime movies where the family comes together, right? And they make a decision for the affairs of that house, or like House Atreides. How Dune is, that new Dune is so awesome, man. You know, y'all, I love the new Dune. And, but House Atreides and the family members of House Atreides are important to making decisions for that house. That's happening now with Pisces upon Mars's entry. And I think it's an opportunity to think about, to give front and center a front seat to your Pisces house. Think about that the rest of April. Where is it situated in your chart? What is happening with those house topics? Now is the time to give primacy to those concerns. So for example, if it's your first house, who do you want to be? Where are you going? What's your purpose of this world? What kind of appearance do you want to project? What is, the soul has incarnated, your soul in this physical form. What are you doing? What do you want to do? That might be the first house. You could say the 11th house. Who are the networks of power and networks of people that you are enjoying or engaged in? So you can see you can do this for every house topic, but that is your theme. The rest of April is the Pisces house now, with the 4 rulers there convening. The last thing I want to say about Mars and Pisces, Saturn's grip is complete for now, okay? Nothing is with Saturn anymore. Upon this Friday, 5 a.m. in Central Europe, Saturn only rules itself, and of course the dwarf planet Pluto, but of the 7 traditionals, Saturn has no more responsibility. And that may feel some levity for all of us, especially as we're getting into the summer period in the Northern Hemisphere. People are traveling and making plans. I love that Saturn gets relegated to basically contemplating what it's done. I feel like this is like, Saturn really ripped apart reality and turned reality upside down. All of the pileups there with Saturn. And now Saturn gets some time away to consider what it did. Kids, when they rip something up, or dogs might be a good analogy. You come home, the dog has torn up the paper towels, and then you remove it into its pen and you let it sit there, and it has to think about what it did. This is how I maybe see Saturn now being being given time to contemplate everything it's been responsible for. And then we get to go out and do things with Saturn there in its pin. So that is a beautiful thing about Mars's entry to Pisces. Let's move now, the last chart. I mean, there's more to say maybe, but I want to just move. We can keep it next week. We can talk if we have to. The last chart I want to discuss here is the 16 April chart, the full moon in Libra, 2055 in Central Europe. Cool full moon. I'm actually really optimistic and I love this full moon. The thing I like about it is Venus is the double ruler. Venus exalted in Pisces. Double rules this full moon in Libra, both term and domicile. My two favorite forms of dignity. Now Venus is averse. Venus does not aspect this Pisces moon. It does by, what is that, Antisha? Yeah, it does by Antisha. There's a connection there. So you might get some of these antitial relationships between Libra and Pisces as a way to maybe mitigate the aversion. But it's still averse if we're using the major Ptolemaic aspects. But even though you have an aversion, the ruling planet of the sign still is extremely powerful in this chart. It is the exalted Venus, the pleasure Venus, the beautiful, the truth's side of beauty. This is why it's the John Keats, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, beauty, truth, 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 beauty. This equating of the two in Ode to a Grecian Urn by John Keats. I think it's one of the major breakthroughs of, you know, my personal philosophy, that poem and that line of just that beauty can convey truth, and truth by its nature is beautiful. It has to be, because it releases us from the lie, right? And there's a sweetness to truth, you know. And I think about, I mean, I got this beautiful painting here. I have no idea who did it, but I look at that sometimes. The colors are gorgeous, and it's a tree, and there's just so much truth in the painting. What you know, what art do you like? I'd be thinking about that during this full moon. You may want to get around that art. You may want to see it if you have it in your physical person, or put it on your big screen if you have it. Put up your favorite painting and let the truth of it come through. Let it emerge. Even, you know, poetics, Venus in Pisces is certainly, with Mercury there, maybe is more of a poetic placement. But what's your favorite poem? You know, what is your favorite song? Shoot, you bring music into this notion of accessing truth. Sometimes the song is what we need to soothe the soul. I remember in the past like few years, actually this is now getting 10 years ago, even longer, 11 years ago. Last time Jupiter was in Pisces, actually. This was part of my Jupiter and Pisces story. I went through some heartbreak, you know, we all go through heartbreak. But it was deep heartbreak, you know. That's the great thing about love too, isn't it? We love, and then it comes with the heartbreak side. But music was the only thing that could really touch what I was feeling. It was the only thing that could convey it. Or where I could see it reflected back to me. And this was the music of Elliott Smith. I'm a huge Elliott Smith fan. I mean, I love his songs, but his whole oeuvre, album after album after album, it was like he was the only one who could feel into the moment for me. And there's other artists and other songs, but something about Elliott Smith was my last Jupiter and Pisces story to deal with heartbreak, but it was the truth of that beautiful music. You know, Venus is music and beauty. And so this is what I think about this full moon in Libra now. With Venus and Pisces ruling it, we may be able to feel in with some of the beauty around us in the art as a way to deal with the larger context of the moment. The Pisces pileup. Pisces is a sign of dissipation and release and being out of control. It's a mutable sign. It's a water sign. I'm going to talk about that in the next slide, but let me complete this slide. Saturn, well actually I'm just going to go to the next slide and I'll come back to this one, but this is a point I wanted to make about Pisces itself. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, so it's a night sign, which is internal. It's not necessarily going out into the outer world, it's what happens inside, right? Our bodies and our relationships and how we feel, right? Feeling is of the night sect. It's of the Venus and Mars. I talked about this last week, and the moon, these things we do in the home. It's my favorite analogy. Planets of the day sect are involved with out there. Planets of the night sect can maybe bring a tonality of what happens when we shut the door and then we're in our the worlds of our family dramas and our internal dramas and relational dramas. But that's what Pisces is. It's of the inner world. And so what I have here is that it's internal expansion, wisdom, truth, and clearing, right? Jupiter rules it. But you think about bringing Venus in, how art can be used for eternal expansion, seeking and feeling and experiencing wisdom, knowing truth, and then clearing and cleaning. And for me, it was my grief process of that breakup and that really difficult period for me, and the healing of all my, that's the thing about breakups too. And this is not even astrological, but I'll just mention it. These intense breakups, they bring up our whole lives, right? It's like the whole part of the self that then interacted with another and then separates. And so they can be grieving the whole of the life. And that was certainly the case for me, grieving a lot of things that were incidental, that had nothing to do with the relationship. But just to come back, it's this idea of clearing and cleansing and cleaning. The grief that is Pisces, one of my favorite keywords for Pisces. And so how does art and beauty interact with your grief and your internal grief and your love and your connection and the bittersweet nature of life itself, right? That's what I feel like this full moon can emphasize. So let me come back to the other slide. The other point I wanted to make was that Saturn in Aquarius is the only planet now, traditional, other than the sun, obviously, in Aries. So you get that Aries sun. But it's Saturn in Aquarius making the trine to the moon, somewhat close there. And then the sun's Saturn sextile is brought in here. Remember I said I would talk about that a little bit later in this slide. Well, I'm talking about it more here from the air trine Moon Saturn. And I think about the distance side of connection that may be prominent, the beautiful beauty and truth and art for accessing truth, but maybe there's a sense of the distance if we feel separate. I think here, and this is very Saturn, but the idea that you're born alone and you die alone. I mean, now some people may die, the Notebook, right, with their partner dying perfectly. I'd still say maybe they're dying alone if their consciousness has to, but I mean, most people, 99.9% are gonna come alone and leave alone. There's a certain spiritual truth and wisdom to the idea that we are ultimately separate and having our own experience of consciousness, even in relationship and connection, even with the painting, right? It's how we perceive the painting. And beauty in memory, beauty in longing. That's what I think about Saturn is memory. Maybe you'll be thinking about past loves. Hey, I didn't even think, I was like skipped over this and I'm talking about my past breakup now. This is the kind of Saturnine feature of this full moon in Libra where you can reach into the past and feel into previous loves, losses, previous experiences of beauty. I was thinking about, I used to go to this museum at the University of Texas campus, the Blount Museum of Art. I've talked about this a lot here, but they had the abstract expressionist wing. And I used to go just sit and look at the paintings and just be with them. It was one of my favorite things to do. But even art is about the past, right? It's long, that art was made in a time before many of these artists were dead. So there's something about Saturn here, the exaltation ruler of Libra, making a trine to the syzygy, the full moon, that I think can bring in more serious themes of longing and distance. And then remember, Venus is averse, so that kind of underscores this idea of like feeling into the beauty, but maybe there's some kind of separation we might have to confront during this moment. Okay, and I think, was that it? Was there one more point? Yeah, the last point I'm gonna make. Pisces is the key now, like I already said, but for this other reason. This syzygy, full moon in Libra, ruled by Venus in Pisces. The next one, solar eclipse in Taurus, ruled by Venus in Pisces. The one after that, a Mars-ruled lunar eclipse ruled by Mars in Pisces. And so the rulers of the next three syzygies are in Pisces. So it's another reason why it's all Pisces now, all about Pisces. Think about Pisces in your life, internal expansion, wisdom, truth clearing, everything I just went into. But where is it in your chart, and how can you bring those Piscean energies into a house topic? Okay, let's move. Let's get the final thing I do every week, the card of the week. Let's pull it. Let's see what this cartomancy, if you want to say cartomancy is a playing card deck, this would be technically cartomancy. It's very tarot infused, so I always say pulling a tarot card too, because this deck actually is derived from a tarot deck that I made. Maybe someday I'll start pulling the major arcana from my deck. At some point I will. These decks will be available on my website hopefully at some point this year. But let's get this up. Let's get this up. This is the final card. This is going to be the Jack of Diamonds is this card. The lowest card in the deck, the final numbered card, and the Jack of Diamonds. So this is Virgo. This is Virgo. We talked about the Virgo new moon, and now we get the card in this deck that corresponds to Virgo. And let's just say a little bit here underscores this Virgo moon moment, this waxing Virgo moon trine and in mutual reception with Mercury and Taurus, and then being seen by both Benefics and Pisces. I think maybe this card is saying use that, be with that, great energy, underscoring my pick for transit of the week. I like seeing it. What are pages or jacks or mutable signs? They're the young energies, things that were just beginning. And so maybe you've got some tenable things right now. Maybe you've got some things that are just growing, some green shoots, to bring the earth element analogy. Stay with it, stay with it. Know that when things begin, that is not their ending. Things begin, that is not their ending. And so stay with the things that you love, that you're passionate about, that you're aligned with. Know this auspicious moment with this Virgo moon, there's certainly promise there, I think, with the mutual reception between the moon and its ruler, that the beginning and the outcome can be mutually supportive. That Mercury and Taurus, the fixed sign, you may need to have the Taurian staying power with some of the things in your life right now. And so stay with it. The power of beauty, the beauty of youth, right? The promise of that is the kind of regal nature of midlife, where we become fully formed and we have life experience to pull from, and we can, use our experiences later to become even more powerful, let's say, or have more strength for our humanity. Okay, I'm gonna leave it with that. Have an awesome week. This is S.J. Anderson. Take care of yourself. Talk soon.